To you from my book entitled, Sir, We Found Your Dog, about the life of Trent Stephen Schmidt. First, the reviews. Dr. William W. Neer is Professor Emeritus of Communication Studies at Butler University, where he taught for 42 years. Over those years, he has served as Dean of the University College, Director of the Honors Program, Head of the Department of Communication Studies, the Chair of the Faculty Governance, and the first Dean of the College of Communications, founded in 2010. He writes, "This book is a tribute to a hero. Trent Schmidt was a hero in several ways, as a military man, yes, but also a spiritual hero. Three authors here weave the tale of this man's life: the father, Reverend Stephen Schmidt; the mother, Wendy Schmidt; and the subject himself, presented through his many works as a poet. The narrator throughout is the father, a superb writer in his own right, who lets the reader feel and even experience the deep feelings left in his heart and mind as he reminisces about a son lost too early. The mother inserts notes of maternal love and insight only she could provide. The reader may most appreciate, however, the beautiful poetry left to us by this man, this pastor, this soldier. Although the facts indicate Trent died on Indiana State Highway 37 south of Indianapolis, in fact, he was a casualty of the longest-running war in U.S. history in Afghanistan. Reading this book presents one with a palpable sense of the losses inflicted by our modern wars. As people said of the writer Primo Levi, that he died 30 years after the war in Auschwitz, although he was physically in Turin, Italy, so we should say that Trent Schmidt died, not in Indiana, as it may appear, but in Afghanistan, as a hero to his country, to his family, to his friends. Next, Dr. Lawrence P. Wilkins, William R. Neal Professor of Law Emeritus, Robert H. McKinney School of Law, Indiana University. He writes, "In the several reviews of publications I have written over the course of my career as an academic, not once have I characterized any author as courageous for having written a piece under my review. In this unique collection of memoirs, reminiscence, reflections, poetry, and fiction by and about several members of the Schmidt family, no other word could adequately capture this work by Stephen and Wendy Schmidt. Courageous for laying publicly bare their trials and tribulations of birthing and raising their younger son, Trent, who often seemed hell-bent on testing the bonds of parent-child relationship, to say nothing of the patience of authorities, in his quest to follow a persistent impulse to prove that preachers' kids, or PKs, are not sissies. Courageous in sharing with the reader the private writings of Trent, whose brilliance revealed an imaginative but tortured soul who, in his inner searches for significance and meaning in his own life, frequently portrayed a character who often made bad choices and lived a life filled with shadows of mistrust and indignity. Courageous in reliving a nightmare come true and revealing their innermost thoughts, feelings, and reflections as they experienced it and continued to experience the tests of faith and hope as their lives as mates, parents, grandparents, and people of the church continued to unfold. I have known Steve since his first year in law school, when he became my student and scholar. I thought I knew his formidable mettle then. I have continued to learn from him to this day about the strength of human character. Come, join me in the privilege of reading this most endearing, heartwarming, harrowing, heart-rending, inspirational, never-to-be-forgotten story of the Schmidt family and their searches for answers to some of life's toughest questions. Thirdly, and finally, Reverend Ray Brown, Senior Pastor of Truth Tabernacle in Avondale, Arizona. He writes, "My review of this book comes from a different perspective than others. As his uncle, I knew Trent from his earliest days and had the privilege of watching him grow up from a newborn infant into a formidable young man. The conflicts in Trent's life are evident in his life choices. Going from pastoring a growing church to a career as a soldier in the United States Army is not a career or path often seen. My memories of him are by definition personal, That this young man would feel the need to protect his family and country came as no surprise to me. There was always a streak of compassion in Trent that made him seek to help others. I admire the capacity of his father and mother to tell a story that must be painful to relive. Having lost a 22-year-old son myself, I realize the price they must have paid to relate this narrative, but the story needed to be told. So I salute these parents, but most of all, a young man who died too soon so that others may enjoy this great nation. Forward. After beginning this story and working on it for some time, I was searching among the many files on my computer for poems which had been written by my son, Trent Stephen Schmidt. These I had discovered long before, but had put them aside because there was too much pain associated with their reading. When, after nearly 5 years, I was able to muster the courage to renew the search, I found them all nestled in a folder I had named, but not with a name that would necessarily clue me to the contents. When I rediscovered this folder and began to read the poetry written by my son, I concluded that no manuscript of his life could be complete without including these writings. So, as one browses through the chapters of this volume, the reader will find a quilt of personal reminiscence and the amazing literary legacy left behind by someone whose life was cut too short too soon. I will be including chapters of his own words as he describes growing up in a preacher's home, his battle with drugs and alcohol, and his experiences as a pastor of a medium-sized congregation. My wife, Wendy, Trent's mother, is also a part of this tribute. As the reader moves through the volume, they will encounter the anecdotes I've shared. These will be followed by my wife's thoughts regarding those anecdotal sections. There are some apparent contradictions between my views and those of my wife, but I've not tried to reconcile these. We are sharing these stories as we recall them. Then Mother's memories are followed by any pertinent thoughts shared by the subject himself, taken from a paper he wrote titled The Hamster's Wheel. In Trent's writing, he often referred to himself as Jackson, or some form thereof, and his brother Todd as Jimmy. This brilliant life was cut far too short, and it just wouldn't do for him to disappear off the span of time without an enduring legacy. Dr. Tom Malone, deceased pastor of Emmanuel Baptist Church in Pontiac, Michigan, once stated, "There are only two ways that mankind can be lastingly influenced. That is, by preaching and by writing." Wendy and I have chosen to write with the hope that a legacy of Trent Stephen Schmidt, born November the 25th, 1975, will endure. Introduction. I've begun this story many times in my mind. How and where to start has been a problem from the very beginning and may never be satisfactorily resolved. But one must start somewhere. So let me begin by saying that my purpose is to portray the life of and to honor the memory of a brilliant young man who was incredibly gifted and complex. I've concluded in order to tell his story, I must share some of myself and our family, because it was out of this incubator and environment he grew and developed. Like any other child born to a family, he exhibited a lot of the behaviors and values taught him by word and example. As any other child, some of these behaviors and values he loathed and rebelled against, and some he embraced. Regardless, as the old saying goes, the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree, and these behaviors and values, embraced or rejected, became a part of the sum of his life. As I have lived moment to moment since February 11, 2011, the day he left us, there's not a day that passes that I do not think of some aspect of his life, indulge some memories, and ponder how to get a grip on the grief that has racked my soul and that of my family. Occasionally, in the recesses of my mind, I sum up the experience of his passing in the harsh, raspy whisper of Colonel Kurtz in the movie Apocalypse Now. The horror. The horror. I encourage you to get a copy of Sir, We Found Your Dog. It will soon be available on Amazon.